Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Yvonne Lutsch, investment principal at Bosch Venture Capital. Yvonne, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. Thank you, first of all, for having me here, for inviting me to this exceptional opportunity to talk about venture capital and also to talk about our strategy. There's not the one classical way to go into corporate VC. There are many different ones. So my journey actually is probably for some corporate venture capitals a more typical one. So I started with a corporation. So I started with Bosch back in Germany more than 18 years ago. Very long time ago. I started as an engineer in the semiconductor fab. I became a group leader there, and I went to engineering, got another leadership position there. And then I joined one of Bosch's internal startups called Bosch Sensor-Tech. And Nicola knows Bosch Sensor-Tech because of his own history. Very interesting, because we were like arch enemies, at least in the marketplace. And with Bosch Sensor-Tech, this was very interesting because this felt almost like a startup within a corporation. So we were a separate legal entity. I was employee number 58, so we were still counting. After that, I got the opportunity to go to Silicon Valley to start up an innovation team here. To help one of our big divisions called automotive electronics, but it's not also automotive, but also consumer electronics, including the sensor business where I was in before, to help this organization to leverage Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, it's about startups, it's about innovation, it's about disruption, but Silicon Valley is also about cooperation. So after starting this innovation hub here, I figured out what venture capital is about. And I was like, okay, venture capital, that's the top, right? I don't know why I felt like that. I cannot really explain, but I was like, okay, I have to figure out how to become a venture capitalist. And then sometimes you're just getting lucky. The Robert Bosch Venture Capital office was here already for 10 years, and they opened up one new position. And of course, I fought for it, I applied for it, and I got it. And this was the lucky part of it. And I think I was also uniquely capable of doing this because they wanted to hire someone with the network and the history within the corporation, but they also wanted someone who can talk startup, like the language, who has the right attitude, not to scare them away, to build bridges. And I was completely blown away. And that's how I ended up 3 years ago in corporate venture capital.
Do you have other examples where you really focus on the entrepreneurs, which is not necessarily what's best for your mothership?
I don't recall any particular example, but generally speaking, and this is probably also interesting for some of the people listening to this, what is our investment thesis and how strategic are we? So basically, we are like a financial VC, but we need a strategic fit to the corporation. And since Bosch has also a very strong internal innovation team, we have corporate research, and they do nothing else than innovate on a daily basis. We would be stupid not to ask them what they think, or the business units. But sometimes the startups are too early for the business units, or it's like a little bit of not invented here to the corporation, to the corporate research people. But we still think, after listening to the Bosch people, it's still worth an investment. Then we do the investment. And we do the investment because we believe in the team, in the entrepreneurs. We believe in the product and the market. But probably throughout the journey, the startup pivots. And then it's going like in a different direction, and it's not very useful for the corporation anymore. But since our mandate is to work with the startup and to support the startup, this is like bad luck, because then we probably cannot help them as much as we wanted in the beginning to work with Bosch. but we are still there and we want to work with them, and we can introduce them maybe to our competition because you have all the contacts, or work with them on a different strategy. We help much beyond the cooperation and the strategic fit.
Do you first look at, is it going to be a type of VC type returns, really good returns if everything goes well? Or do you always have the filter of, wait, is it in our financial strategic fit first?
I think the very first filter is whether this has some value, some fit for Bosch. So it's in the very, very beginning of the funnel. And this is also reflected in our internal process, actually. So we discuss the strategic fit with our advisory board, which is Bosch people, but it's an advisory board. It's not the board of management. It's only advisory. And then the rest of all decisions and the milestones we are reaching to come to an investment is done within Bosch Venture Capital ourselves. And then it's all about, is this the right team, the right product, the right market, the right time, the right financials, the right other investors to make this a financial success. That's how we work.
Can you talk about this advisory board? Is it a mandatory step? What happens if they're negative? What happens if they're positive? I understand that if they're negative, it doesn't mean you can't continue. But if they're positive, does that give a strong signal that you should really look into it? Or how do you work it out?
Yeah, good question. First of all, it's a mandatory step, but we don't anticipate this to be a burden. It's more an opportunity. The whole Bosch Venture Capital team, I think, has a very strong sense what actually is a strategic fit or not. And this advisory board, we have a regular meeting with them and we pitch them many companies where we think this is worth a second look. And they confirm the strategic fit. In theory, they have a veto and to say this is not strategic. This is almost non-existing. And I think this is because of two reasons, because we have a very good internal filter. It's actually three reasons. The second reason is Bosch is very broad, so you really can find a strategic fit. And the third thing is also that the advisory board acknowledges and values our task is to look outside of the box and look onto the fringes of what is Bosch and what is not Bosch. That's also what we are there for. To look into areas where Bosch is not there yet or not strong yet, or Bosch is like exploratory or has just is curious about an area. And then we can help them to get more knowledge in that area because we invest. So I think it's a very good relationship with them and our own decision.
So I'm going to make it tough because you said it's very difficult to answer the question where you invest. Bosch is very famous for automotive, clearly, but what are the areas that Bosch Ventures is interested to invest in 2021?
That's a tough one. I think we rather like to look into core technologies, as I said, which are applicable for more than one division. And that's then more in terms of like next generation computing, how to help Bosch and the world in a bigger sense to get most out of all the data produced. And there are two things. There's one, the analytics to bring the best out of the data, but also the compute itself to make all these gigantic neural networks running, for example, or to do this on the edge. And then a drill can be an edge device. A car can be an edge device. A dishwasher at the end, or wearables. So analytics, compute, interfaces, sensors, connectivity, and you cannot say not AI, so you have to say AI. These are all the very interesting fields. And then we see once in a while, like also verticals coming and growing.
I want to get your take about how it's helping maybe women reach out more easily to VCs or CVCs. and whether the dynamics is different?
I don't want to play this women are not strong enough and men are always overpowering. I don't want to get into this, but if I was in a room, like physically in a room, in a board meeting with 20 men and me, I feel intimidated, probably. If I am on a Zoom call, there it feels more democratic. Cutting off people digitally is also more democratic. It just happens, and sometimes it just happens because of this stupid delay, because your signals are going 3 times around the globe. But it's also easier for me to cut off people. It's an interesting dynamic, but I feel, for me, I cannot really explain why, but I feel like this. And if other women feel like that, even if they feel like this stronger or more confident, I think this helps a lot, because we know this is a topic that many women still lack the confidence some men have, and it's always helpful to get this.
So can you share a little tips about how did you manage to get this role? Clearly you had the right profile, you were in the right place, you already understood startups, you understood the mothership, but is there some tips about how you managed to convince you were the right person?
I don't know exactly. Maybe I should have asked my colleagues at the end why they chose me. There was one situation I remember where I had my local boss, but we also had the managing directors in Germany who wanted to meet me and wanted to see how I think, what I did, and also what I accomplished. And if you know what the people on the other side of the table really want to know and want to see, if you know that, then you can prepare yourself. So this one person was very driven by, what are your successes? And then I realized I don't have a good out of my drawer thing. Here are my success stories. So I created it overnight and I sent it to him after the interview. I cannot tell you whether this helped or not, because I never asked him about it, but I think it was for sure not a mistake to do that. Understanding what the counterpart, what is important to this person, whether it's your personal strengths or whether it's your accomplishments in your last position, whatever. And I was thinking about that, and I tried to deliver exactly what they wanted to see, to feel confident to hire me, because I have to give them the confidence that I'm the right person.
Now, you're based in Silicon Valley. You moved there because it was a Silicon Valley. I understand that you have a geographical scope. How much of what you invest or where you invest is actually with a bias of Silicon Valley versus, let's say, the full USA?
I think Silicon Valley is important to talk to random people, as I mentioned. But we also know that there are very good universities, very good startups, very good research facilities all over US and also Canada. So our mandate is North America. That also includes Canada, and we have some portfolio companies there. So long story short, Silicon Valley plays a role, but if it comes to specific areas where, for example, AI, like Waterloo, close to Toronto, Canada, that's like a spot where people just know that this is a great spot where people get a very good education. And I also invested in a startup in Cambridge. I think now their office is in Boston, but they started in Cambridge. In quantum computing, and quantum computing is also, it's not everywhere yet. There are some hotspots, so we decided to invest in that company.
You mentioned that there is lead or co-lead. Is that a clear preference from you to have a lead or co-lead, or is it just case by case you decide?
It depends. If it's an area where we have strong feelings in terms of probably Bosch experience or our own experience from the team, then we probably feel more comfortable leading. If this is an area where we think this is very cool, a new area, but we are just not the experts, it's probably smarter not to lead. Again, we want the best for the startup, right? And sometimes we have some financial VCs we know pretty well. We know that they have a strong overlap in terms of areas they are interested in. We invite them to co-lead because still it's perceived as more valuable if a financial VC is in the lead or in the co-lead and prices the round. It's still a perception thing.
It's interesting to see the difference between US and Europe in this case.
You have to face your challenges, right? Here, if I introduce Bosch, then people are like, oh, the dishwashers. If I'm lucky. If I'm not lucky, they say, oh, the contact lenses. And I'm like, no, that's Bausch and Lomb. And in Germany or in Europe, everyone knows about Bosch because everyone has a cousin, an uncle, a friend, a mother or a sister working at Bosch.
That makes sense. You mentioned the investment committee is inside Bosch Venture, so it's not related to the mothership directly. Can you talk about the size, who is in it? Is it always the same people for every deal, or is it geo-focused? How does that work?
Now, we are one worldwide team. That's very clear. We have 2 to 3 meetings with a worldwide team per week. This is unfortunately early for us in the morning and very late in the night for the Chinese team. And we are still playing around with how we can make this bearable for everyone. The worldwide team has a partner structure and they at the end vote on the deal. There's no regional decision making, but it's also important that we are not so large, and you can see the size of the team. It's like 20 something people online. Also the others, like the investment directors and the investment principals, we all have a say and we are all motivated and entitled to ask the questions and the right questions and to say whether what we like and what we don't like. So I think it's pretty democratic, but at the end, yeah, someone has to say yay or nay. And that's a worldwide team.
I see. And so how many people have this nay or yay vote?
If you count, it's 7 partners.
7. And do you need the majority? Do you need 100%?
Yeah, we have what is called majority -1. So we can accept 1 no.
Do you mean you need 6 out of 7 or
6
3
out of 7? Yes, sorry.
Oh, 6 out of 7. Wow. That's a very high bar, right?
It is.
Out of the investments that you've seen in the last 3 years, are they most of them 7 out of 7 or are they more 6 out of 7? The ones that have been approved?
That's pretty like mixed. There are deals there is more debates about, and there are deals which seem to be more straightforward for everyone. But we never make it easy. We try to be as picky as possible because we hope and we believe that this also improves the quality of the deals we do eventually.
It can't be easy if your proposal gets 5 votes out of 7. That must be tough. Very nice. And so maybe you can walk me through your last investment. Choose one out of the ones you made, how you made them, all the way to building your proposal, getting it approved, and then the closing. And sometimes people think the closing is easy, but for a corporate, it's never that easy. So if you can walk me through end-to-end an investment you made and how you presented it, how you get the approval, and how you closed it afterwards.
First of all, you meet the entrepreneur. And actually, there's a very nice short story I want to mention. I met the entrepreneur in a self-organized VC startup pitch event. I organized this together with a friend during the pandemic. And to make it not too easy, we only selected female VCs and female entrepreneurs. And the CEO was pitching, and I was like, if she wants to get this revenue this year, or next year, I have to talk to her. So after this 3 minutes pitch, I talked to her again, and I talked to her again, and I pitched her startup and the idea and everything to our local team. We are 4 people to run it. And our team is all about running it to the other heads to gather as much collective knowledge brain as possible. And then we talked to Bosch about it. We realized that there is a great strategic fit, which I wasn't actually aware of. Because there are so many Bosch businesses that I have to admit I don't know all of them. This was the beginning of the story. And at some point, we met the CEO, we met her also in a coffee shop in Palo Alto because she was in San Francisco. So we could at least meet once in person. Whether this was necessary or not, I don't judge it, but it was still nice to see her in person. And finally, we invested. And this takes a little while. The hardest part was the last 2 weeks. It's totally feasible, but it's still a little bit challenging.
Do you think that face-to-face meeting was important for you to have? Clearly, it didn't change your mind, but do you think that it was important to have in case it could have changed your mind? And the reason I'm asking is sometimes it's not in meetings that you can really judge people, but it's outside, like in a coffee shop, how they interact with other people and so on. Why did you feel like you needed this face-to-face?
I think for me personally, it was not necessary. Although I told you it was different and I enjoyed it to meet her in person. I think for the rest of the team and everyone, it made it a little bit more real. And this helped.
Very nice. So what's interesting about TDK Ventures is our very first 2 investments, that was before pandemic. We made the investments with only Zoom calls and access to the data room and not meeting face to face.
You were ahead of your time.
Yes. Now, one thing I think is really nice for you to say, and I think it will probably remove guilt for many people who are in corporate venturing or thinking about it, is you've been in Bosch for 18 years, right? So the expectation is you would know everyone in this big company, or at least you would know what Bosch does. And that's not possible. It's such a big company. Same for TDK, same for Intel, same for so many companies. And you need this link to this company. And you have this advisory board that gives you more connections and so on. So I think it's really nice that you admit that you don't know everything in the mothership. It's a constant effort to make. And maybe I can ask as one of the final questions is, what do you recommend CVCs that are starting to make sure that they get as much value from the mothership and they really understand what's happening in the mothership?
My tip is actually to talk to the right people in the mothership. And this is not only necessarily the right functional level, but also the right mindset. And I think over time, the corporation will also value the importance of open innovation or outside innovation and puts the right people with the right mindset also in the right strategic positions for open innovation. Because it's a lot about whether you can talk startup, whether you can understand how fast they think and act and proceed. And therefore, I think having the right people with the right mindset in the right positions is very crucial. Also on the business area sides, and making the management people aware how important this is, I think it's crucial for success.
I can't agree more. I think the mindset is really important, and what you've explained about you being entrepreneur first and really understanding what they need is very important. If you interview these people that are thinking about joining, what kind of questions would you ask to make sure they really have the right mindset versus the wrong mindset?
It's less about asking them, it's more about their reaction, for example, to talk to startups. We facilitate introductions to the business units. And when I see people from the business areas or from corporate research talking to the startup, I can learn a lot about their internal mindset, because if people want to tell you what you want to hear, they tell you what you want to hear.
Okay, this is really good actually. I think the way people act with the startups, especially some corporate VCs, or even worse, probably financial VCs, because they give money, they feel like they should have control and they should be the ones deciding. But at the end, it's the entrepreneur creating the value.
Yes, and if it's the combination of we have the money and we are the big Bosch, that's even worse. in terms of the worst attitude you can have. Doesn't mean you have to have it, but there's a potential for it.
Very nice. I want to thank you. They were very candid answers, and I think a lot of the audience will be able to resonate with what you said about venturing and what does that mean to help entrepreneurs. So I really want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Nicola. This was really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yvonne. Bye.
Bye-bye.